Hello, everybody. Happy Monday. We are here at another Facebook Live. Let me expand this. I hope everyone's doing good today. So, hello. My name is Erika Granadino, and I'm a little somewhere different today. So today I'm actually in my backyard because I wanted to do something simple, but I feel like something that a lot of us may be curious about knowing, and maybe we just haven't really gotten out there, put ourselves out there to just kind of develop some of these skills. So today I have a little setup here in my yard. And I'm lucky enough that I have some really awesome conifers kind of right behind my yard. So I do have a redwood tree behind there. They're actually not in my yard, but they are nearby. So I was actually able to get some branches that have fallen because it's been really windy lately. And I am in Eureka, so I am in Wiyot Native Territory today. But hello, today is actually Women's History Month. So congratulations to all those women and the legacy of women that continues to thrive and all of the awesome things that her story has accomplished throughout the year. Yes, I like to talk about her story. And if some of you have been able to check out my Ports program, which is kind of like a virtual field trip that we do for it's like an online resource for teachers. And so my program, I actually do it at Humboldt Redwood State Park, and I talk about the her story of the women that helped preserve Humboldt Redwood State Park. So if you guys keep tuned to our North Coast Facebook, Instagram, and the Humboldt Redwood State Park page, we will definitely be highlighting some of this awesome her story that has to do with redwood preservation. But today I'm going to be talking about something a little bit different. Hi, Bud. Hi, Darlene. And so today I wanted to talk about keying redwoods, or just kind of like keying in general. There's been a really huge movement kind of talking more and involving more just regular citizens, right? The citizen science movement. And many of you may already have certain apps like iNaturalist that help you go out there and identify certain species and kind of connect with other individuals that are also doing the same thing. And with COVID, there's been a lot of things that maybe we're not able to do as much as we used to anymore. So more people are taking up these sorts of kinds of activities and hobbies, whether it be, sprucing up your garden, or maybe getting some more indoor plants, or just taking more hikes in general. A lot more people are starting to opt for these sort of natural activities that, kind of help them socially distance, but also, kind of keeping your mind preoccupied and, learning, right? That kind of is a really good thing to just kind of keep your mind active. And so I was fortunate enough that I was able to go to school and kind of get my science degree. And so I did some keying in my classes, and this wasn't really the most fun thing. And some books can get really complicated, and some scientific terms kind of will make people not want to do that sort of thing, right? Because you're like, oh, like all of these terms, like I'm not a scientist, I don't want to do it. But it could be lots of fun. And it really just depends on, maybe grabbing the right book, making sure that you get something that is from your region, right? So if you're going to be IDing here in the North Coast, I have a really good book that's actually, it's called Trees and Shrubs of California. And I've found most of the trees and shrubs that are in the North Coast are in this book. And it's a simple book because we all know that there are so many kinds of genuses, species, family names when it comes to plants, and so much plant terminology. So it can get very extensive, but it really does help if you have a good book right from the region that you're trying to look at, because otherwise you can be completely overwhelmed about all those different kinds of regions and may not pertain to the place that you're looking at. So the first kind of step is to find some sort of book or ID guide, keying guide, right, that is actually from that area. And maybe try to find something that's, kind of more of a beginner level, like a novice level, because things can get pretty complicated pretty fast. So, in order to kind of get our mind thinking about what are some of these things that we're looking at, right, when we find a plant or when we see a tree that we want to identify. And so, in a way, I'm going to kind of reverse ID, right? Because we already know what this tree is, right? It's a redwood tree. But I'm hoping that with this video, maybe having us talk about some of these features, some of these more morphological features that the redwood tree has, simply just from this branch alone, it can help you guys be able to identify a redwood maybe where you're from, right? So let's get started. So one of the main things that you need to look at, obviously, is have a good keying guide from that range. But the other thing is to know, what range you're in, what habitat it is that that plant is from, because that's really important, especially once you get into keying lots of different plants. There could be a plant that's very similar in one range, but it could be similar to another one that's in a different one. So it helps to kind of know where these species grow in general, right? To kind of have an idea of where they're likely to be found. So the other thing is kind of brushing up on some of the terminology of like what leaf arrangements are, some of these morphological features, like the different kinds of leaves, right? Maybe different kinds of flowers, the twigs, whether they have cones, right? Are they cone bearing or not? So all of these things are kind of things that you need to look for. So we're going to look at this branch and I'm going to just talk about some of the things that I see here. So this already we know is a redwood branch. And just by feeling it, I can see that it's pretty waxy, right? So it's not like some leaves, like some deciduous leaves, right, that tend to be kind of pretty fair and they seem like they would evaporate lots of water. So this already tells me that it's a waxy coating on this leaf. What's something else that you guys notice? If there's something you guys notice, please feel free to type it in the chat. I will be better about reading your guys' chats. I know I've been bad about that in the past. So another thing that's unique to the redwood is that it's got this flat, the needles lay on it flat, right? So turn it this way, turn it this way. It's kind of like two-dimensional, right? The way that the leaves are arranged. They're kind of in these sausage link-like formations, right? So it's like you can kind of break them off if you wanted to, like right here, right? So that's another thing. So a lot of other kinds of pines have like a bottle brush, right, where it's like all around. So it's really important to see how the leaves are arranged on here. Another thing is the leaves themselves. So these ones are somewhat of a needle-like, right? So they're not like some pines where they're really long needles. But the other thing that's important to notice is how long these little needles can be, right? Because all of these measurements will be so crucial when you actually come into keying, because 1 inch can make a difference, right, from one plant to another, or even a quarter of an inch. So that's also really important to notice. And when it comes to the redwood, I've talked to you guys about how the leaves differ depending on what part of the tree it's at. So I wasn't able to get ones that are really high, but this one is kind of more down low, which is what we typically see. As you get higher, sometimes the leaves get smaller. But with coast redwoods, it's important that sometimes the leaves aren't needle-like shaped like this. As they get up higher, they become more awl-shaped and they start to resemble more like the giant sequoia. So kind of an important fact to know about coast redwoods. The other thing that we can tell simply from this leaves is you see this one color? Hello, Denise from Ohio. Wow, so far away. Thank you for tuning in. So you see green, right? And then when you turn around, you can see this sort of whitish color, right? So it's very different, and that's another distinct characteristic of the coast redwood because it's got its stomatal bloom here on the bottom side of its leaf. So Erica, what's a stomatal bloom? Yeah, so that is going to become a really important term for you to know when it comes to IDing, especially conifers, these kinds of trees, right? ABs, pseudotsugas. So the stomatal bloom is really basically just like this waxy white covering around the stomata. What is the stomata? So the stomata are these like tiny pores that basically just allow the tree to breathe right in and out. This is what it uses for gas exchange. So on different kinds of pines, different kinds of trees, right? Stomatal bloom will be arranged differently. So sometimes it'll be all over. Sometimes you can't even see it, right? Sometimes, like at the coast redwood, it'll be on the base. So white stomatal bloom on the base. Sausage-like links, right? They kind of link into this like sausage-like formation. And the leaves differ, right? They can be needle-shaped or they can be all-shaped. So yeah, that is some of the things that we can notice, and that's not even getting into the cones, right? Because that's so much more extra stuff. But the cones do help. So when it comes to IDing your keying, sometimes going to on certain times of the season, right, when flowers are blooming or when cones are being dispersed, all of these different stages in the plant cycle and that life cycle of that plant are really important, and sometimes for certain species that between the genus or the species it's so hard to differentiate them. Sometimes even the best of botanists, this is the only time where they can actually differentiate some of these species, right? Is when they actually have some of these reproductive structures or during these times. So really important to take that into account. So I think we talked a lot about some of the things that can help you identify a coast redwood tree. And obviously there are more, like the bark itself, or even just the way that the tree kind of droops. There are other ways that you can help identify trees, like just seeing them from afar. Of course, that kind of takes more an advanced eye. But you can start small, right? You can start by just simply noticing these small little morphological features that you see in plants. And pretty soon, you will be able to just be driving down your car in the highway and be like, oh, that's Engelmann spruce, or that's a coast redwood. So that's really cool to know. But before I leave, I'm going to read a little bit how it would sound if you were to key this out. And thankfully, if you were watching this entire time, we kind of talked about some of these things, right? Like we talked about some of the things that we've noticed with this leaf. So I'm going to start kind of just for funsies reading through these key guide, and we'll see where it leads us, right? We'll see if with this knowledge that we were able to work up in these last 10 minutes, if we're able to successfully key a redwood in this book. And of course, we're kind of cheating, I know, because we're doing it kind of reverse, but you know, this is a way that you can brush up on your skills, right? This is kind of how you learn. It's just trial and error. All right, so we shall start. So key to genera, and I started where it says conifers, right? Because I know that the coast redwood is a cone-bearing tree. So let's start. It says leaves are scale-like or awl-like. So it could be scale or awl, right? Because awl are the ones that are kind of higher, and then usually they're needles and linear at the bottom. So it could be either or. It tells me if they're the first what I said you could go to two. Leaves are needles or linear. Let's say that we're new to this. So we're gonna base it off this what we got, right? We didn't see the leaves at the top, so we don't know if they are. But we're just gonna say that these are linear, right? So leaves are needles or are linear. So it tells me to go to number 10. So wow, I'm like skipping through a lot, right? So simply knowing how the leaves look on this one, it's already taking you to like you're jumping through a lot of different steps. So that's a really good sign here. So where's 10? Okay. Leaves are needles and are set in bundles of 1 to 5. Papery bundle sheets are found at the base of the new leaves. Bundle sheets may be present or deciduous on mature leaves. And then it goes dot, 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 and it tells me to go to the genus Pinus, if that's what I see, right? But these are leaves, but they're not arranged in bundles of ones or threes, right? Because we see in one of these things, there's like several, right? They're in sausage link like connections, but there's several in these. So that's not what I see here. So I'm just going to go to the next one. And then it says, leaves are linear, are attached singly. So they're linear, yes. They're attached singly. So singly or singular, sorry, I probably said that wrong, means that it's just one attached to the thing. And yeah, right, it's just one that I see. Each one is attached. So that's going to be a yes. That's going to be a yes for me, darling. And they lack sheets at the bases. So sheets, if you guys have ever seen it, in the pines, right, that have like the really long needles, they'll have several needles, some of them, and at the base, they're like these papery, sometimes brown little things that hold it together. The coast redwood does not have that. So we're going to say they lack sheets. So that second one on number 10, that's where we're going. So then it tells us to go to number 11. It says leaf tips are sharp pointed to spiny and leaves are set in flat sprays. Seeds are surrounded by fleshy arils and are in barrel like woody cones with pellet scales. So right here in number 11, it tells me two different things. So it's telling me how the leaves are arranged. So they're arranged flat. So that's one thing. And it's also giving me the option to be able to tell this species if I have the cone. So in this case, we're going to be newbies and we're going to say, well, we didn't have the cone, right? We only have this. So based on that one, the only thing I can go off in that one is that I see that these are arranged flat. So I'm going to go with that one, even though I don't know if the cones are what it says or not. But I know that they're flat on there. So it tells me to go to number 12. So leaves are 1 inch to 2.5 inches long. Even on this big one, right? I'm gonna grab the bigger one. Okay, the leaves are definitely not 1 inch to 2 inches long. For sure. Like even if that's not 1 inch or 2 inches long. So we're gonna say that is not it. And then it gives me another option for that one. And it says leaves are less than 1 inch long and are sharp pointed but not spine tipped. Seeds are surrounded by red arils or are in barrel like woody cones. So it has to be this one because the leaves are less than 1. So then it tells me to go to number 13, right? And number 13, there's 2 options. So there's leaves have petioles and pale green stomatal bloom beneath. Seeds are not in cones but are surrounded by red fleshy arils. So that is the Pacific yew. I know that these leaves do not have petioles and that the stomatal bloom is actually white. So it can't be that one. So let's look at the only last option that we have here. And that is leaves lack petioles. Yep, they don't have petioles. They have whitish stomatal bloom beneath, right? So there is stomatal bloom beneath, right? Because it's not on the top. And the seed cones are barrel-like and have pellet scales. So I don't know the seed cone, right? I'm going to pretend I don't. But based off of that, we got our answer. So right here, even though you might not be able to see it, you probably can't. But it says the coast redwood Sequoia sempervirens. So round of applause, squirrel friends. We successfully together were able to find through kind of not in a fun way, right? So we had to key, but we actually got the right one. So yay! Thank you, everybody. Oh, did someone say something? During winter, redwood never loses its leaves like other trees. It's because of the tree type. Yeah, so That's another really important thing to know, right? That redwoods are evergreen. Evergreen means that they never lose its leaves. So they're not deciduous like some trees. Like when you think of the fall and you think of the trees that turn red and orange and the leaves fall, those are the deciduous trees that are just kind of engraved in your mind. But the evergreen trees like the pines, the conifers, right? Those that we think when we think of like the snow and the mountains and that kind of landscape are usually evergreen. That means that they don't shed its leaves. But there is a redwood that does shed its leaf, and that is actually the dawn sequoia. That's the um, Sequoia dendron glypsopstriboides, which is located in China. So that is, my friends, the only redwood that is deciduous. The giant sequoia and the redwood are not. So thank you so much for joining me on finding some tips and tricks and just kind of like helping ourselves become these citizen scientists that we so desperately want to be. And you know, nowadays, there's so many things that we can all be involved in. And you don't have to be a fancy scientist with a fancy degree and title to get involved in nature research and citizen science because that's literally what it is. There needs to be so many of us just going out there helping collect data, and some of this data could be done just on your hike that you take on the weekend, or you know, on a stroll where you take your dog. There's so many opportunities that we have, especially now that we are trying to spend more time outdoors, and some of us are trying to find new activities and new hobbies to do, and this is a really good one to do. And it's, I think, something that you know, we really need people to get involved, especially when it comes to climate change and finding out all of these sorts of solutions. It helps to have a lot of data, and we don't have all the groundwork and, you know, the people out there doing this kind of work, right? So the more of us that get involved, the better that we are. So goodbye, friends. It was so nice hanging out with you. And maybe another day we can do another species that we can help key out. All right. Thank you for being with me today, and I shall see you in a couple weeks from now. Have a good day.